Thus we have kind of a mixed bag of Jews who returned from Babylon and Persia with wives that they had married during their exile. Others came back to the land from exile and either divorced their Jewish wives once they returned, or they came back unattached, perhaps as children, then married a foreign woman while they were living in Judah. Why those left behind didn't seem to be as important in this process, I don't know. But no doubt some of them were affected as well. But what we do know for certain from the listing of names is that even the high priest family married foreign pagan women. Imagine that. Then a number of common priest families are called out as guilty. After that, Levites, singers, gatekeepers. And compared to the list of names given us in Ezra about the priests and the Levites who returned, it seems that the mixed marriage debacle involved the majority of them. So what we see is that the highest level of the Jewish religious hierarchy was as guilty of this crime against God as were the lay people. No wonder Ezra was so dumbfounded and shaken. And to his credit, the leadership wasn't given a pass, while only the lay people suffered the consequences. That's the more usual scenario in both political and religious purges. It is self-evident that all these religious leaders who had lived in exile for so many years had eventually turned away from the Torah as their holy manual for godly living, and instead they fashioned their own doctrines and traditions that permitted much of what the Lord expressly prohibited. You know, it doesn't take very long, especially when the leadership declares themselves as the authority to decide what is right and what is wrong, to fully pervert a religion or a way of life. And once that happens, whatever the new way is, it becomes the accepted norm and orthodoxy that's to be followed without question. To challenge the orthodoxy or to explain to the followers and to the leadership that what they're doing is wrong, it's against God's laws and commandments, is of course met with sneers and incredulous retorts that if everybody agrees upon it and everybody's doing it, how can it be that you're right and we're all wrong? My goodness, if the entire priesthood, including the incomparable high priest, marries pagan women and pronounces it as good and right in God's eyes, how can it be otherwise? This explains why Ezra, the pious Torah scholar, was by God's providence able to become closely associated with the king of Persia and his royal court, whereby he gained their confidence and their support and then was awarded highest authority over all the Jewish people in the beyond the river province that included Judah. And this authority extended from the high priest to the lowliest Jewish bondservant. Because if Ezra didn't have such unquestioned dictatorial authority, there is no way he could have enforced any reform of the Hebrew religion whatsoever. He would have been laughed out of town. He would have been considered a troublemaker. He would have been considered a heretic by every level of Jewish society. Sound familiar? Not much changes over the ages. Here we stand in 2014, a small but energized movement of reform-minded believers consisting of Gentiles and Jews, almost all of us who have come from many years in either synagogues or churches, but at some point realizing that something has gone substantially off track with our faith institutions. So why doesn't everybody else see it? Foundational premises that we heard from the bema or from the pulpit, sometimes for decades, simply didn't and doesn't match with God's written word. And when we finally noticed it and we thought about it and we fretted about it and we prayed about it and eventually became bothered enough to point it out to friends and even to the pastor or the rabbi, we were told we weren't qualified to know such things or to properly interpret the Bible, or that it doesn't matter what the Bible says because this church or synagogue has its own set of faith doctrines and traditions that it was founded upon, and by gosh, it's dedicated to them. We could take Ezra's story, bring it straight into our contemporary Judeo-Christian religious setting as is, not have to modify a thing. The ultimate question that the book of Ezra asks us all to decide is this: which do we desire more? The praise of men or the approval of God? It's that simple. A comfortable man-made faith that has an aura of godliness, or a far less easy Bible-based faith that has been given to us by the Lord? I believe that most who are listening to my voice have already made that decision, and that's why you're listening in the first place. Our struggle is neither new nor unique. We find it all throughout the Old and New Testaments. So as we close out this book of Ezra, the inescapable question that I believe that the Lord confronts us now, all of us, with, is this: will we have the faith, the perseverance, the courage, the devotion to God's truth as the only true religion? Will we stick with it no matter the personal cost, how weary we might get, as did Ezra and other zealous followers of God in all eras? As Solomon so wisely decided late in his reign, as written in Ecclesiastes 1:4-9, generations come, generations go, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises, the sun sets, then it speeds to its place and it rises there. The wind blows south, then it turns north. The wind blows all around and it keeps returning to its rounds. All the rivers flow to the sea, yet the sea's not full. To the place where the rivers flow, there they keep on flowing. Everything is wearisome, more than one can express. The eye isn't satisfied with seeing, the ear not filled up with hearing. What has been is what will be. What has been done is what will be done, and there's nothing new under the sun.